I am here with Rachel Johns, and it is
Hello.
episode 5 of our podcast, Dear Rach and Soph. Hi, Rach.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, and I'm looking forward to finding out what you've been up to because it's a few days since we spoke. I've been away. You've been
Oh,
busy doing
yeah.
things. So, what have you been up to?
Well, I'm more excited about what you've been up to because you've been in a nice place, but I suppose we'll keep the exciting stuff for the end, hey? Well, I have sort of half banished myself from social media for the last week and a bit. I deleted all the apps off my phone just over a week ago because I had a very busy time with promo and all that for the other Bridget, and I really need to get stuck into writing my next book. I've also got edits landing this week for the
Right.
book at the end of the year, and I'm going to America in 2 weeks. So, or probably by the time we air this, I might be there because um, and so really this week has just been about locking myself in my office and focusing on trying to get as many words down and work out what the book is about. I'm having a little panic day today because I don't know, I feel like my main characters have no chemistry between them and it's supposed to be a rom-com. So, I'm having one of those wobble days.
Do you,
But you go.
I was going to say, do you think you're your own best judge of that?
No, definitely not. That's really hard, isn't it? Because I do feel like we're not our own best of judge of our own work, and that sometimes we might be having a bad day. I think hormones, and
Mhm.
like things else that are going in your life can really affect how you feel. So I think sometimes I'm probably worrying for no good reason. You know what I
Right.
mean? And but then other times, as Jeff said, I think I've mentioned before, and I know you probably feel the same. Like, I really think my body can tell me.
Mhm.
I listen now when my gut, like, it just doesn't feel like it's got the spark it needs to have, or it's necessarily progressing. I don't think I know my characters well enough, but then part of me knows that that's just my process.
Mhm.
I need to just keep going. That it doesn't have to be perfect right at the beginning. But I think we all want it to be perfect right at the beginning, right?
Well, yes, especially at the pace you're writing, and that's the
Yeah.
publishing pace you have.
Yeah.
It's there. Time is precious because it's
Yes.
very much of the essence for you. And I would imagine it's hard to avoid feeling that pressure to wanting to get it down and get it right because you know what's coming down the track, right? You
Yeah,
know there's going to be some rewriting, there's going to be a copy edit, we proofread, and you
exactly.
know that process is going to be pretty quick, and you're also going to be writing other things at the same time.
Yeah,
So
and you don't want it to be terrible, and you just rush it out. But I did take longer for my last book too, so I think that has put a little pressure on this supposed 2 book a year thing. But I think the most important thing is, yeah, to try and not give into that pressure and just to, you know, but it's hard. It's hard getting out of your own head. And I think the more books you write, there's more, like the first book you write, you're just like, no, nobody, you've got no one's thoughts in your head. You've got no reviews. You've got no reader expectations or feedback. You've got no editor's comments or anything. And then the more books you write, the more of that head noise is there. I don't know if you feel like that too.
oh, absolutely. I also think the more characters you have staying with you, there's
Yeah,
because I don't think we let go of our characters. They might get parked in
that's
a part of
true.
our brains, but they're still loitering. And so the more books you write, and you have written a lot of books, that's a lot of people to carry around.
I love the way. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Maybe how do you like I need an exorcist. Exorcist? Hang on, I can't think of the way how to say it.
Exorcist, yeah.
Exorcist, that's right. I need an exorcist to get rid of some of the old characters. Maybe that's
Well,
the problem.
except then it's almost like you're letting go of well, you are letting go of people you created. So maybe it's just a matter of finding a knack of how to live with them, and
Yeah.
and also realizing it's a good problem to have because you have had so many books published that you have whole great casts of people now to carry around with you. So I guess it's not giving in to them when they're there going, hi, remember
Yeah,
me?
yeah, yeah. I also think like, and I'm sort of counseling myself as we talk about this. Like I also think, yeah, it's a first draft and you just got to go, you got to get to know people, but also that not every book you're going to feel as connected to.
Mhm.
And I think it wasn't actually the last book I wrote, but because the other Bridget I did feel really connected to. It's been, quite an exciting ride, changing publishers. It's, probably opened me up to different readers and stuff. It's got more promotion probably than I've had for a while. And so it's hard kind of to let that go. And so I think that book felt really close to my heart. And so not every book is going to be as close to your heart. And I think that makes things you more, I don't know, I'm more harsh on myself now than I used to be.
Right.
Got to remember what Nora Roberts says. You just got to get down because you can't edit a blank page, right?
That's right. Yeah, got to get your bum in the seat and stick with it. And also, I guess when it is a character like Bridget to whom you feel very close, she might be still at the front of your brain, especially because you're writing Fred's story. So, that world is very much still with you.
I was thinking, have you ever written a sequel? I don't think you have. I'm going to ask you the reason why. It's because I think, like, although this is not strictly a sequel, it's a linked book. And I would say that all my books are linked books rather than sequels, in terms of, for me, a sequel is continuing with exactly the same kind of main characters. I guess I had sort of a sequel for The Art of Keeping Secrets and How to Mend a Broken Heart, but they weren't all the same characters that I kept. But what I'm saying is, I think sometimes it's hard to write a sequel because you take the expectations of that book and you want to give the readers who love that book, glimpses into the past, what's happening, characters that have appeared before. But at the same time, you've got to be true to the book you're writing right now. And you don't necessarily, some of that stuff is probably that kill your darling stuff that actually for this book, you don't necessarily need it. So it's a matter of working out. So yeah, have you ever written a sequel? I don't think you have.
I haven't. No, I've been asked for sequels. And I think it's tricky. Maybe that's a big reason why I haven't done it. It is easier in a lot of ways just to cut and run. Which doesn't mean the characters aren't still with me, but it is
like you said,
how you manage it. How would I manage a sequel? I have thought about it, particularly for one book, and I won't mention it because I don't know that my publisher's as keen on the idea of a sequel as I might be.
I found a lot of publishers are not very keen on sequels, but we should anyway keep going.
But I think readers are. I do get asked. Fairvale in particular. I do get asked about that one. I think it's because I just left them suspended in the Northern Territory in 1980. People want to know what happened to them. But no, I haven't attempted it. So yeah, food for thought. Noting down, you were saying today was a panicking day because I think it was Johnny Cash who there was something about a list he had. In fact, it was Johnny Cash because on the list was Kiss June, which is his wife. So it was a list of things he had to do, and on the list was worry. So he assigned time to worry
about stuff. I've actually heard a few people doing this lately in terms of writing their worries down, either when they get up in the morning or before they go to bed at night.
So
maybe it's necessary.
Well, I'm a lifelong worrywart, so it's a habit that I continually try to break. But when you're used to doing it, and I'm an eldest child as well as a daughter, and I do think eldest daughters. There's something written about Taylor Swift and her eldest daughter syndrome. Eldest daughters, I think, get worry as part of the package.
Worrying about everyone else underneath you and stuff, and that as well.
Yeah, well, just be a good girl, and you would have had this as well.
Because only child and oldest daughter have quite similar. Only child and oldest child, I think there's quite a few similarities.
Responsibility, worry, thinking about, you have to think about everyone else, make sure they're fine. Societal pressures to be a good girl. And they are, even if you have a parent who doesn't put them on you, they are everywhere around. So if you're in a cousin group, for example, as a small child, and you're the eldest girl in the group, you will by default be given responsibility for all of the children. Right. And I always say I can tell, I'm usually pretty right, I can pick eldest children when I meet them because we all have the same vertical frown lines. Because we all spend our childhoods doing this. Don't do that. You can't do that. Mum said don't do that. And so this vertical frown line thing that happens.
That's so funny.
That's my theory.
Well, apart from worrying and writing and anticipating edits, which are coming on Thursday, I got some exciting mail that I wanted to show you. And for anyone who's listening, I'll have to say it out loud. It came today, so perfect timing. I don't know if you can see.
Oh, fantastic.
by Olivia Goldsmith, which Sophie mentioned, I don't know if it was last episode or the episode before, and I can't even remember why you were talking
I
about
can't
it.
remember why, but that is a mint condition copy you're holding.
I think we talked about bonkbusters and stuff. And anyway, I've read other books of Olivia Goldsmith, but you mentioned that bestseller was all about the publishing industry, and it's such a gorgeous copy. Like it actually makes
Is.
you go, I want a modern cover with something like that.
Because we were talking about your Blockbuster Book Club
Yes.
title idea. I think that's how we got on.
Yes. Well, if I ever run Bonkbuster Book Club, I want a cover that looks similar to this with the big. But anyway, so I'm very interested in reading this. And there's a really interesting thing that I might share with our listeners who are possibly mostly writers or definitely readers. And the very beginning of this book, well, near the end, it's got near the beginning, it says part 1, a novel idea. And it says, one day God decided he would visit the earth. Strolling down the road, God encountered a sobbing man. Why are you crying, my son? The man said, God, I am blind. So God touched him, and the man could see, and he was happy. As God walked farther, he met another crying man and asked, why are you crying, my son? The man said, God, I am crippled. So God touched him, and the man could walk, and he was happy. Further down the road, God met yet a third man crying and asked, why are you crying, my son? The man said, God, I am a writer. And God sat down and cried with him. I thought that was perfect for how I was feeling today.
I totally understand. As expressed in the past, crying is part of the gig for me as well.
Yeah.
And it's you also mentioned hormones, and I do think it's important to address that because there is a certain amount of flippancy attached to hormonal changes. Men and women have them, of course. It's just that women act in a bigger cycle, apparently. But it can, depending on which stage you're at in your cycle, if you have a cycle, you can feel, I think, more vulnerable. And I do think the nerve endings feel more raw. And when you're writing, particularly if you're writing about something that's emotional or hard, or you're feeling like it's just not working.
Pressure,
yeah, it's just a more vulnerable time, and it's good to be able to acknowledge that and just say, you know what, I really just need to curl up into a ball, have a little sob, maybe take some Panadol, and
yeah, exactly. No, well, I want to know, have you done any crying this week?
No, because I've been away. I've been in beautiful Noosa Heads, which is the setting of Weekends with the Sunshine Gardening Society, but I was there as a civilian, and I actually did no book-related activity.
Oh, lovely.
I didn't even drop in on booksellers because I know that booksellers don't like that, having been a bookseller. I didn't do any stunt visits. I have been going to Noosa since I was a baby, and I just love it. I relax there. All I do is go to the beach, swim a lot, go for walks, eat out, that sort of thing, and I love it.
Like bliss.
Yeah. It's very, I love to say that a day in Noosa is worth 5 days anywhere else because it's just so relaxing, because there's not a lot of choice, actually. If you're there, it's like, well, there's the beach.
Just relax.
Yeah.
I'm curious, did you plan the time, like, was that planned? Because I know you've just finished your edits.
Yes.
Was that planned as a sort of relax, break, reset after that, or just coincidentally it happened then?
It's an annual time that I go, and so happily it falls around the end of edits, but while I was away I did get the manuscript back just for some tiny last queries, so I wasn't quite done, and then it was also a matter of going, oh, do I really need to do this? I'll grow up. Of course you need to do it.
Oh, I totally understand.
So because we're never really off the clock, I guess the stories are always in
that's true.
the brain. So it's not like anyone was intruding on time where I was thinking of nothing. I was certainly still thinking of the story. Yeah.
I know. That's just part of being a writer, I think, isn't it?
It is.
And it's good. I think it's good to have like that. Well, it depends. You're not actually, I don't know, maybe you are writing something else at the moment. I was going to say you're not writing, but maybe you are. But I was going to say, like, constantly, like, I went on the train this afternoon, and although I've logged off, I was reading a book, I was just minding my own business, but constantly I'm thinking, oh, hang on, is that what's wrong with that chapter? Or maybe I do this instead. It's just really hard to switch off, which I guess is why only writing one book a year at the most is a good idea, because it means you maybe have some time to switch off.
little bit, but the ideas always come, and I do have other projects that I'm thinking about. And in fact, while I was away, I was in the surf or having a walk, thinking about something that I'm planning,
Yep,
which
yep.
is not for anything that's locked in at the moment, but it's another project that I want to do, and I've
I'm
already done quite a bit of planning for it.
so curious.
And I was thinking, I have to, like, no, I've got to do this. No, that direction's not right. No, it needs to change this, that, and the other. And I haven't written down those notes because I'm just letting them marinate. So often what
Yep,
I'll
yeah.
do is let something marinate. And if I'm still thinking about it
Then
a
you
day
know
or
it's
two
right.
later, it's like, okay, I do need to make that change. But because sometimes there's a whim, I just think, oh,
I have to say that's really interesting because I sometimes struggle between do I write something down when I've got an idea, or do I let it just, you know, fester, and if I remember it, it's important or not. So yeah, that's a
well, it's more, I do write down ideas straight away, but it's more if I have an
well, I
idea.
meant like fixing things,
Yeah,
like,
fixing things. Yeah.
because
It,
I guess when you're trying to fix something, like there can be a whole load of different ways you could go, and you might have five sort of semi little thoughts about it, and but yeah.
It's because it could just be that you're feeling frustrated and you think, oh
Yeah,
well,
yeah.
I'm just going to fix it like that, and then that'll be fine. And it can be like and well, a not helpful thing to do because it can come out of frustration and a bit of
Yeah, yep, yep.
patient with oneself. It's like, oh well, I don't know what I'm doing, so why don't I just do that and then it's done?
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
the best way to fix something. It needs to come from a place of essence rather than ego, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I like that, essence rather than ego. I think even that's kind of my problem today. Like you write something, you've got ideas about what you want to write down. And I'm not a plotter, as we've said before, but like this book's set in Norfolk Island, and I went to the cemetery there, and I imagined a scene kind of that would possibly be sort of my hero and heroine's kind of first meeting. Not it's a sec, and then they did something where it happened before the something a meeting happened before that, and I'm kind of annoyed about that. But I'm like now trying to work out whether I should push for the cemetery or whether I go with what's anyway. So yeah, sometimes you've just got to let things simmer.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to be more zen like about this now. As you said though, I think the pressure of time gets to me. If I
Mm.
knew I had a year to write
Yeah.
this book, I think that I wouldn't let that get to me as much. But yeah, I'm trying to be more zen-like and just go, hey, write something down, have a play, and it doesn't have to be perfect first time. That's what I would tell anyone else who is listening to us. Don't compare your first draft with someone else's polished, published
Yeah.
book.
Yeah.
But I think we put so much more pressure on ourselves and it takes actually us having to talk to ourselves properly. Like you have to actually speak to yourself and say, hang on, take a step back.
Yeah.
As you said the other day, you wouldn't talk to your friends like this.
Well,
Yeah.
and it's also worth remembering something that Shonda Rhimes, who is the creator of Grey's
Yeah.
Anatomy, said about writing for television, which is that writing for television is like laying track for the oncoming train. And so, because in that context, it's what you're doing is laying the track for the carpenters and the set dressers and the wardrobe and all that and the
Yeah.
actors to come in. But I think when you're writing at the pace you are, Rachel, an extent, it's a bit like that. You are laying track for the oncoming train, but the oncoming train is your readers.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like you're basically trying to get it down so that they can get on it and come
Deep
towards you.
breaths. Maybe I need you to do some yoga and meditation with me.
Well,
Anyway, we'll
that's
stop
speaking of
whining.
yoga and meditation. That
Oh
is
yeah.
something that I may be teaching at your book
Oh,
club
you
retreat on the Gold
are.
Coast in June.
I'm
So I haven't been to one of your retreats before, and I'm very much looking forward to it. I have seen the schedule, and I believe you have some spots available. And I'm mentioning it because you have dozens of people going already. But for
yes.
people who may not know about the retreat, can you please tell us about it?
Sure. Well, the best information is if you just go to, I think it's Rachael Johns bookclubretreat.com, but if you Googled that, you'll find it. We do have some tickets available. Last year was our first. So I probably mentioned before that I run an online book club with my friend Anthea Hodgson. And as I often do, things on a whim, a couple of years ago, I was like, oh, what if we did a readers retreat? And it actually came about because I probably have mentioned her before. Ellen Hildebrand is one of my favorite US authors. And she used to do this thing on Nantucket called the Ellen Hildebrand Bucket List Weekend. and it happened once a year. Or twice a year. I'm really sad because she stopped it a couple of years ago and I would have loved to have gone. And it basically was, I think it was capped at like about 100, 150 people, and they all descended on Nantucket for the weekend and sort of lived in an Ellen Hildebrand novel. They did, visited the shops, and it was a schedule of, author, it's mostly just her. But I didn't feel like I was enough of a draw card. Anthea didn't think she was enough of a draw card. So we decided, let's do a readers retreat, where we go and we get other authors to come along too. So it's similar. It's kind of like it's a cross between, I guess, a retreat where you're doing kind of nothing and just chilling out, and a sort of a writers' festival. But it's a lot more, I don't know if intense is the right word, but because there's only 100 to, well, I think we've got about 130 people, including the authors. So, there's a lot. You wouldn't want to go much bigger, but there are a few tickets left if someone does want to come, because if you go much bigger, I think you have to like split people up and do sessions and stuff, but basically we had no idea what we were doing last year because it was a first thing. We had no idea if it would go really, really well or if it would be a complete and utter flop. We did a couple of things, and one of the things which is most popular, so we have some author panels, which I think we've cut down a little bit this year because we also listened to the feedback of people, and they said they weren't really, they're not there for the writing, they're there for just sort of book chat and all that kind of stuff. So we've got a few panels. We're going to add a debate this year, which should be fun. Haven't worked out the debate topic yet. But the absolute highlight of last year's retreat, apart from the fun and games of the cocktail night, and then we had a quiz night and the awards, it's not the awards night, quiz night on the Saturday night. We're not sure what we're doing this year. But the best part was something that we came up with, having no idea how it would work, which was called author speed dating. And so what happens is we split everyone up into the sort of tables of 10, and then we put the authors each on a table, and then timed, like had a timer. So after, I think it was 7 minutes, we've gone a bit longer this year after feedback, the authors would change tables. So the readers stay the same and the authors would go around, and each author had 7 minutes with a group of like 8 to 10 or readers to basically do whatever they wanted. So some people just talked about, their latest book. Other people did sort of full-on activities. Some people asked the readers, do you have any questions for me, kind of thing. I think some people did some sort of craft, so everyone did something totally different. And it was really, I think one person got the readers to sort of brainstorm a new story with it. It was very smart. I think it was Stella Quinn, she had a worksheet for everyone. They had to come up with it. So, and then Tricia Stringer sort of brought a few, show and tell items and stuff that were significant to show her career. Someone asked for name, suggestions, and it was just it worked amazingly. Everyone loved that the best. So yeah, so it's just kind of, it's not like, I think the best thing to say is people are worried about going by themselves. You shouldn't be, because everyone is very friendly, and we worked really hard on the Friday night to make sure that immediately people got to know people with some safe, fun mingling games. But yeah, no, I hope it's as good this year as it was last year. It's a big thing to organize, but it was a really rewarding thing to do, and just to see everyone sort of connect over books, make friendships. It was just, unbelievable.
And
so yeah, there's
I have to commend you, because getting 130 people to something that got to travel to it, it's on the Gold Coast,
yes,
is phenomenal. So congratulations.
Yeah, we were surprised, how many people. We had no idea when we started last year whether it would be, 10 people would say, and when you ask people, would you do this? You get all these people say, yeah, we'll do it. But then only half the people actually commit. So it is a bit scary because we don't have a big, company or anything behind us. And so we had to, outlay money first. So it's a bit of a hairy thing, but it's all good. We've got most of the numbers now that we need to go ahead. And I think it's going to be lots of fun. So can't wait to see you in person there. And you have genuinely said you're going to do a yoga session at 6:30 in the morning on Saturday. So I'll have to drag myself out of bed and yoga for the very first time in my life.
I can accommodate all levels. I teach what's called an all-level practice. So beginners, experienced, all are welcome on the mat. And I also just wanted to, because I made a note, because you mentioned going to Norfolk Island.
Oh, yes.
That is for research, and I've never been. So would you recommend it?
Look, it's very interesting. I really loved it. It was very humid, but you're okay. I know you're from Queensland, but
I'm from Sydney. That's humid enough.
yeah, yeah. I quite enjoyed it. Like I was thinking, because we were going from Perth, which was like 45 degrees when we left, thinking, oh, it's only gonna be 24, 25 degrees. That's like a dream, but it felt almost as hot. But I think it's hard to explain, because I'm not good with words, you know. Um, but it's kind of it's small. I had no idea, you know, what it was going to be like. It feels like a real small town. It feels a bit like a farm. There's a farm, there's cows, you know, I see the cows behind you. There's cows wandering around, you know. There's no sort of real nightlife or anything, but I really loved it. I'm reluctant to say go there for a holiday necessarily, because unless you're the person who wants to look at all the history stuff or just chill and relax, you know, it depends what type of holiday you want.
Yeah.
It's not like a resort type holiday in
Mm.
a lot of ways. You want to go and do tours. I got to go to Colleen McCulloch's house and see
Ah.
her do the tour of her house, which for a writer or a reader
Mm.
was probably the highlight of my trip. But yeah, it's not like it's not your paradise island in a lot of ways. It's quite rustic and stuff, but I
Mhm.
enjoyed it. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, we also wanted to mention that we have some reviews.
Yes, I was so excited to see them because, you know, we're talking here to each other. I have no idea if anyone, you know, is listening to us. We've had a few lovely shout outs on social media, which is great. So I wanted to say, you know, thank you to those people, but
Yes, thank you very much.
especially to the 3 people so far who have given us, and as writers, sorry, you know, we love a 5-star review, right? And so I was stoked to see we have 3 5-star reviews on Apple. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Kaz, to Annie, and to laptop on the ironing board. Ooh, I love that. So laptop on the ironing board, Annie and Kaz, just thank you so much for taking the time to not only give us a 5-star rating, but to tell us what you enjoyed. And yeah, it's great. We've also had a few people interacting with questions. So have we got more questions today?
We do have a question, and it's been sent anonymously,
Ooh.
or the person wishes to remain anonymous. And the question is, do you read while writing your own books? If so, what? Because I do think some writers are worried that if they read other books while they're writing, it's going to influence their writing.
Yes,
So,
I
Rach, do you read while writing?
yes, for 2 reasons. Well, the reason I mostly do is because you have to be a reader to be a writer,
Mm.
and I think you learn more and get inspired by, you know, for your own work by reading other people's. But also, like you, I've heard people say, "Oh, I just don't write or don't read while I'm writing." I have periods where I'm just focusing on my manuscript and I don't read anything. I've heard that, and I've also heard people say they read in a totally different genre
Right.
while they're writing. So, or if they're writing fiction, they might read nonfiction or, you know, things like that. I do read, because if I didn't read, except when I wasn't writing, well, because I'm on at least 2 books a year and all that, I literally would never read,
Yeah.
right? Because most of the time I am writing. I have, you know, maybe throughout the year I have 1 week off here and there, like, but it's not lots of those things where I'm not, you know, immersed in some kind of story. So that's why I do it, because I think it's important to read,
Mm.
you know, to refill the well, to learn. Just, you know, you have to read to be a writer. That's just non-negotiable, I feel.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't do it if I didn't do it while I was writing. But saying that, I do understand that some people have a fear of um the other author's voice, you know, sort of
Mm.
affecting their work or them taking ideas and things like that. And so I will be honest and say that I don't read rural romance a lot anymore. And I definitely won't read it while I am writing rural romance, because I think in the rural romance sphere, it's very hard to be original these days. Like,
Right.
you know, like we've got a lot of rural romance authors, and I just feel that I'm more likely to doubt about what I'm writing or think it's similar to someone else's, and I just, yeah, I feel like just reading general romance helps me more than necessarily specifically reading in
Mhm.
a rural kind of zone. I also have been through stages where I have chosen specifically not to read like rural romance and women's fiction,
Mhm.
because at the time that's when I've been going through a really dark patch, or like anxiety about my own work and really full of doubt. And it's so easy then to think, I'm terrible, my
Mm.
work sucks, and why am I even trying when I'm reading this, brilliant kind of book, and I'm analyzing everything if I read. I can't help it. I don't know, I think it's a bit like if you study film, so if I'm reading, say, a women's fiction novel or a romance novel, I do read differently
Mhm.
to kind of, if I'm reading like a crime or the very occasional fantasy, I do analyze those books, but probably not as heavily, and I'm not comparing them as much to my own work. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Because even subconsciously, you may start to compare. And then if you are feeling anxious about what you're doing, as you said, if it is a dark time, then you'll hook in without even realizing it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I do also think it is great that you acknowledge that you have some anxiety around your writing, because a lot of people would look at your success and think, oh, well, what's she got to worry about? She's clearly a great writer. She's so
I
successful.
wish I had nothing to worry about.
But it's that it's
Hey, I've
part
got
and
these
parcel.
anxiety tablets because I'm that worried.
Right. I think it is part and parcel of it, and it's probably part and parcel of the nerves being a bit raw, even when you're not hormonal. Like that,
Yeah, yeah.
that's part of the job, is being open to emotional experiences so you can write about them.
Mm.
And then it's a question of how you manage that. And part of what I like to call the everyday courage of just being human is feeling that kind of anxiety,
Doing it anyway.
getting up and doing it anyway. Yeah, it's basically we talk about courage in big sweeping terms a lot of the time, but actually for some people, getting out of bed is an act of courage.
Yeah, yeah, that's so true.
Writing a
Right.
page is an act of courage when you're feeling
Yeah,
like that, because
yeah,
it's
that's true.
there's that
Um,
pull down that can
yeah,
really muck you up if you don't
that's
put
so
one foot in
true.
front of the other.
I do also wonder if my reading habits have changed over my writing career. So I'm trying to wonder, like, I think I always read while the types of books that I was reading, because I'm thinking when I was trying to write for, Mills and Boon, I was reading a lot of Mills and Boons because
Mhm.
I was immersing myself in the structure and the type of and the expectations and the promise. That's why I think reading in your genre is super important, because
Mhm. Yeah.
you see what's doing well and you can see why it's doing well. And if there's something that you're not enjoying, you can kind of go, well, I don't want to do that in my kind of work. But I do think that the more established you get as a writer, unfortunately, the doubt and the anxiety doesn't go away. But I think my voice, I don't feel like I can take, I'm less likely, I feel, to read something and take on that voice, if that makes sense,
Yeah.
because I think I've honed my voice. Whereas like today I was judging some contest entries for a writing contest, and you can tell like these are aspiring authors, and it's very clear they still haven't really, a lot of them hadn't found their voice, if that
Mhm.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Like it didn't fit. There was nothing that sort of, this is horrible to say, but there was nothing that really sort of stood out as being, oh, hang on, this is, I'm guessing as an editor for you, even though nonfiction, some, still they need a voice, right, to read that.
Mhm.
I'm guessing, you might read, 3 or 4 manuscripts and nothing, and then suddenly it sometimes it's the voice, do you reckon,
Yeah.
that calls out to you? I don't know. What do you?
It's the authority of the voice. So you can tell
Yeah.
straight away. We can tell as readers, even those of us who aren't professionally involved in books and publishing, we can tell when a writer has authority, because their
That's a good
belief
word.
in their voice is strong, or they've honed their skills enough to the point where when it's on the page, you immediately feel at ease. I often talk about how writers should put readers at ease straight away. And that doesn't mean,
Mm.
oh, it's a nice, gentle start. It just means that you have to write in such a way that from the first page, the reader thinks, I don't have to do anything here. I can just relax. They've got it.
I love that. And actually, I know one of your favorite authors and mine, who we've talked about before, is Hillary Clinton. Not Hillary Clinton, golly. I haven't read a book written by Hillary Clinton.
Curtis Belt,
I
yeah.
think she has written a book, hasn't she?
Yeah.
Anyway, but yeah, I was thinking of Curtis Sittenfeld and Rodham, which I actually haven't read yet, but it's sitting on my shelf. And I actually randomly pulled this book out because I realized that a couple of and I'm not mentioning what contest this is or anything, so it doesn't, but I realized that this hopefully is helpful anyway for aspiring authors. I realized that one of the chapters I read, there was literally no dialogue or anything in the first chapter, right?
Right.
No. And I didn't have a strong sense of who the character was. It felt like it was just telling. There was no dialogue. And then so I randomly started pulling some books from my shelf to
Mhm.
see when is the first, bit of dialogue. And the interesting thing is I found mostly that did have dialogue in the first, like the sentence, paragraph, page. But then I pulled out Rodham and there is no dialogue for quite a while, but it's exactly as you said. There's an audience, like there's an authority in the voice. It starts with, there was a feeling I got before I spoke in front of an audience, and sometimes also before an event that was less public, but still important, an event that could have had consequences in my life. I just felt immediately like I knew that that person was
Yeah.
someone I was going to be able to connect with. Whereas the writing that I was reading didn't have that. And I think it's exactly what you said, that authority. So that's, yeah.
Well, I think to have the authority, you need to know your character, so
Yeah.
that when we start writing our first chapters, we know how that character thinks and how they speak. So you
Yeah.
write from that place of knowing, and therefore you're not using that first chapter to get to know them, because the
Yeah.
reader has to get to know them. But in order to get to know them, the writer has to know who they are already.
Ready.
And
Yeah.
more importantly, the character has to know who they are. There's that weird thing that happens where, yes, we make the characters up, but they have this other life
Yeah. Yes.
separate to us, and they talk to us and tell us things. So we have to be really comfortable with them. We have to know a lot about them, which may never end up on the page, but it feeds into that sense of authority from the beginning. And it's not something that can be taught. I don't think it's something that
No.
comes from
Practice.
experience. It's practice and intention. I think if your intention as the writer is to communicate with your reader,
Yeah.
just to communicate a story, or even if your intention may be just to get something down on the page, but there has to
Yeah.
be an intention other than I want to write,
Yeah.
I want to finish a book, or whatever it is. And I think it goes back to what I said earlier about the difference between ego and essence, which is
Mm-hmm.
the yogic thing. But if you're writing from ego, yeah, that character is secondary to everything. All the characters are secondary to your ego, essentially.
Yeah, that's so true. Oh, that makes me think too. I think sometimes our ego can get in the way without us even realizing it.
Oh,
You
totally.
know?
Because it's this big obstacle in the path that often is invisible, and you're not going to know it till you knock your knee against it, or it trips you over completely.
Yeah.
And
Because
then
I
you think,
wouldn't
what the
think
hell
I
is that?
have an ego. That sounds really, that almost seems like I have an ego saying I don't have an ego. But you know what I mean? I wouldn't think I have an ego because I suffer a lot from anxiety and doubt regarding and imposter syndrome, which I think we may be discussing with someone on an upcoming.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's like the opposite to ego. But then I think about what you're saying, and I think about the pressures of sort of the ego, if that makes, I don't know.
Well, the anxiety could be said to be the shadow part of ego, and so it's because it's literally the ego throwing the shadow of, I'm not
Yeah.
good enough, I'm not good enough, is the hope. And I'm not at all attempting to psychoanalyze you, Rachel, but
No, I love this. It's
it's
great.
the I hope I'm good enough,
Yeah.
because I think I deserve to be good enough. And I have said in the past, we need to have an ego in order to do this. We need to believe we're good enough to do it, partly
Yeah.
so we can have that authority. And I don't think I have any business writing these books if I don't think that I'm up to the task. So there
That is
has to
so
be
true.
enough
So
of
it's
an
like a
ego.
balance kind
Yeah.
of thing.
Yeah.
You can't, the ego can't be it all.
Can't be all, and it's that thing of I need to have enough of an ego to believe that I can do it, but at
Yeah.
the same time, I'm going to sublimate my ego in service to the story, because the story must always win.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's, at
Very,
least
very
that's how I see it.
wise. You're a very wise lady. So I would like to know, do you read while you're writing?
I absolutely do, because I think like you, reading. I've been reading since I was a very small person. I can't
Yeah.
imagine not reading, and whether I'm always reading multiple books at any given time.
Same.
Fiction and nonfiction. I'm also constantly reading articles. So I read long form articles in magazines a lot of the time. I read a range of magazines,
Yeah.
whether it's Vogue or it's The Atlantic, or those sorts of things. I'll read across a range of magazines just because stuff's interesting.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I like to
Exactly.
know what's out there. So
Have you ever been worried about someone else's voice seeping into your work?
no. I've never actually worried about that. The only time I did think about it was when I read about other writers worrying about it. I thought, should I be
Yeah.
worried?
Should I be worried? Yeah.
But I think if we read broadly, then that's very much less likely to happen, because if you're reading fiction and nonfiction or a range of novels,
Yeah.
and there's
Genre.
so many different voices, it's like, well, if one was going to influence me, which one would it be?
That's true. So maybe we shouldn't just read like the same person over and like, if you find an author you love, maybe you shouldn't read them back to back for, a couple of months, because that maybe then it would start seeping in a
Well, the
little
problem
bit.
is, if you love Nora Roberts, she's writing at such a pace that she's going to take up most of your year.
I know. Well, I just feel like you can never, and you can never like read all her books. So I don't know.
I remember once being in Big W in Tamworth, waiting to see a band play, because they used to have musical artists during the Country Music Festival do some songs in the Big W.
Oh, really?
It was
Wow.
next to the book section. And so I got chatting to this woman who was looking along the Nora Roberts. And she said, I read every single book that Nora puts out. And she, I'm just checking to see if there's one that I've missed. And she's like, nope, no, read it. So
Wow.
yeah.
Do you know, it's funny, in another conversation I had with someone in Big W, it wasn't Tamworth, it was Mudgee.
Right.
So maybe it's his, but this lady came up to me. It was one of my early-ish books, and I was doing one of those horrible signings. I think we may have even talked about that, where you're sitting at a table in Big W or like at Dimmicks or out the front of QBD, and you look like an exhibit in the zoo. Like, I feel like unless you are, well, maybe Nora Roberts or Matthew Riley or maybe Jane Harper, I don't know, like they're always horrible, because
Yeah.
I don't know, everyone's just staring at you and walking past and thinking, who the hell are you? And anyway, this lady came up to me during one of those awkward times, and she said, oh, I'm really sorry, but I only read one author. And it wasn't Nora Roberts. Do you want to guess who it was? Someone else who writes quite a lot of books.
Danielle Steele.
Yes, it was Danielle Steele. But in the end, after talking to me for a while, she did buy my book. I don't know if she reads me as well as Danielle Steele now, but again, Danielle Steele is one of those authors that writes so many books. Like,
I think she writes like 4 a year or something.
Yeah, so if you only read 4 a year, then you don't need to read anybody else. But I think that would also get kind of boring. Like, although I said about reading the same person over and over again, I don't know if I've ever read more than like 2 books in a row from the same author, because I do feel like that would get a little bit boring.
Well, because I'm on a bit of a Michael Connelly tear, and I have to mention, if anyone's a
Ooh.
fan of Michael Connelly, the American crime writer, he is coming to the Sydney Writers Festival, and I've got a ticket.
I've never read Michael Connelly.
Extremely excited. Well, he has written a lot of books, and his main character is a detective called Harry Bosch. But there are some other short-run series, but I won't read more than 2 of his back to back. I think it's partly because I like to preserve the specialness of them. I think, I'll go back to that later. I'm also reading out of order, which is a cardinal sin. So and
there's no rules or guilt when it comes to reading.
I'm trying to go back to the start, but I keep getting pulled away by other ones of his books. So I think for me, Michael Connelly's, when I'm writing in particular, he's not an antidote, but I like reading his books just because I know it's going to be great, and there's not at all a formula to the stories, but those characters recur, so that's comforting in its way.
Yes. So do we have any advice for this person who might be worried about voice and whether they should read or not?
I think the advice is absolutely keep reading, but also consider why you're worried about your voice being affected by other writers' voices. It's like, that's at the core of it, is why do you think that your boundaries are so permeable that another writer's voice is going to affect you, and not even another writer's voice so much as the voice in a novel, because the writer might be the same writer and they have different voices for different novels. So it's worried about that story permeating your
on that, this is kind of a deviation, but and I'm sure, as I said, I've read a lot of contest entries. You have read a lot of manuscripts, because through your agenting work, I guess, but also now through your other job. I see one thing with aspiring authors a lot, and that is that they follow every single rule they've ever heard of.
Oh yeah.
And sort of it takes away from, it's like, oh, I can't do this or I can't do that. I must, show rather than tell. And so you either have like just show, I just feel that a lot of people listen to every single rule, and breaking rules sometimes is what
Mhm.
gives you, your own voice and your own style. So I also think a lot of new writers listen to every bit of feedback they get from other new
Mhm.
writers
Yeah.
necessarily. And that's not always, the best way to go about it, if that makes sense. I think if you have feedback from three or so people that is the same, maybe listen, but don't do everything everyone tells you to do,
No.
because that can strip away your essence and your voice.
Yeah, because it's highly subjective, all that feedback. Whenever I've talked to writers about getting feedback from other writers, I always say,
Yeah.
well, a small writing group can work very well, provided none of you is writing in the same genre. So if
Oh,
you're
interesting.
a romance writer, be in a group with a crime writer or a YA writer or a sci-fi or fantasy writer or a true crime writer, so that when that person reads your work, they're not reading for what they would do. They're reading it
I
because
was
of them.
wondering where you were going with that.
Yeah.
That's a
Yeah.
good point. So they're reading as a reader,
As a knowledgeable reader.
a
Yeah.
knowledgeable reader. But yeah, I never even thought
Because
about
if
that.
it's say three romance writers together, then that one of
You're
those
reading it.
romance writers will read the other and think, well, I would do this. It's
Yeah,
like, okay, that's what you would do in your manuscript, but it may not be right for that manuscript.
that's a really good point. I like
So,
it.
so that's the advice I tend to give. I don't have I know they're called beta readers. I don't have any beta readers
Script
for my
partners.
manuscripts. Do you?
Yes, I do. Only really one person now. So I'm just trying to think, my camera's a bit dirty.
Hmm.
um, I have one reader. So my mum often reads stuff, but I wouldn't say she is like I'm really ruining this now. There we
That's
go.
what I was going to say. It's got even blurry.
Anyway, now that's better.
There we go. Beautiful.
My mum has always read my stuff, but she's more kind of proofreading, like she's a good proofreader, so I don't necessarily need, that's not really a critique or a reading thing. I was in a couple of beta reading, or we call them critique groups, when I very much first started writing. So I had probably 4 or 5 people that we'd exchange work and stuff, and we were all aiming for romance. So that's really interesting, because that's where I met everyone,
Mhm.
in the Romance Writers of Australia. And I think the crime writers have an organization, children's writers, there's probably a
Mm.
sci-fi one, and we're always connecting with other people in that genre. And I've never thought about the fact, I think exactly what you're saying is a really good point. And so maybe all the different organizations should be mixing their pools together for critiquing. But yeah, so I do have one person who still reads almost everything that I write as I'm kind of going. And I've kind of got two. So I've got one who is a writer,
Mm.
and now she writes crime, but we both started writing romance together. So I don't know, because she did start in the romance, I think she still reads my stuff with a romance or
Right.
women, like lens, whereas maybe it would be better to say to her, try and forget that. But I don't see it now as kind of a critique so much as I have somebody who also knows where I'm going in the story
Right.
and also knows the characters. So we kind of read each other's stuff as we're writing. And I find that more useful than sort of someone reading it afterwards, because I've got editors, like there's gonna be people, and they might have a different idea to my critique partner. And they know my type of story and where we're trying to sit it in the market and stuff. So they're the expert kind of there, and they've got experience in that. But what I find really good is having someone who, knows a story almost not as well as me, obviously, but can see, where I'm trying to go. And so if I come across a problem, I need to sort of try and nut something out. I've
Mm.
got someone who I don't have to kind of explain the whole thing to, because
Yeah.
they're already in it as well.
Yeah.
The other person who occasionally reads my stuff for me, and that is more of a like, don't panic. So far she's never said, panic. So I don't know what I would do if she did say panic, but is actually a reviewer friend, who we met over my first book, and she's also the admin for our online book club.
Right.
And so like I actually gave her the first 3 chapters of my new book that I'm writing at the moment, The Bad Bridesmaid, the other day, because the character is Fred, as you said, and I was
Mm.
like, is she too narky? Is she too like unlikable? This is And so she read it and she said, no, I don't think she is. I was also worried, is it too slow? You know, are we, which is stupid. I shouldn't worry about things like that at this stage, as I said. So yeah, I do have a couple of people I can kind of go to if I feel like I just need a bit of assistance in some area. But you have no one. So is the first reader for you your publisher?
Yes. And look, also, one has to know one's nature. I don't like team sports.
Yeah.
I am an individual sport
I
person.
don't either, to be fair. I'm scared of balls.
So, yeah, I like tennis. I like swimming. I go for walks. I don't like team sports. So that's an important part of my nature for me to understand, which means that I would not like writing as a team sport.
Yeah. So no, you're never going to do a collaboration?
Well, I think that would be different actually, because then it would be,
Oh.
it's like, that could be like doubles tennis, which I can do on occasion. Yeah. So
I would love
I
to
wouldn't rule that
collaborate
out.
one day with someone, but I don't know if my process is so messy that I'm not really sure how it would work.
And also, I am going to pull you up on you saying that it's stupid of you to worry about things like what's happening in those very early chapters. And I'm going to refer back to the earlier point about laying track for the oncoming train. Because I think when you are laying track for the oncoming train, you want to make sure those sleepers are there, because you know that the integrity of the track is important. So these are circumstances that are peculiar to you, Rachael Johns, as a writer who is being published minimum once a year, at the moment twice a year. So that's not to say I'll spend, yes, worry. It's more that I think it's a completely reasonable thing for you to think about because of the pace you're working at.
Yeah, no, I think you're right as well. And I love listening to hear other people's process. And I think when I say, oh, I probably shouldn't be worrying about it at the moment, that is me listening to people who are saying, just get the first draft down.
Right.
Whereas I think I've realized about my process that that's just not how I work. Like I can't, and so I love that, laying the tracks. I cannot really move forward if I know what I've got isn't working in some way. Like, so part of me is thinking, just go forward, because, you know, just get it done.
I've heard that's what should happen.
Yeah, exactly. But then I listened this morning to a podcast. I don't know if you've read Scottish author Vari McFarlane at all.
Oh.
She's pretty, I really like her books. She's a really great sort of rom-com chick lit author, as she says. Well, she doesn't call herself a great author, but she is, I'm saying that. But it's really interesting hearing someone else has a similar process. And she said today, and the podcast I was listening to, that she only aims for about 600, or she doesn't really aim word count, and that she probably maybe does 600 words a day. Now, she puts out a book a year, and other people that put out a book a year will say they do, 2,000 words a day. And yet it's just a different process. It's about those 2,000 are kind of like just getting it down.
Yeah.
And then going back. And I actually do usually aim for 2,000 words a day. Today I only got 1,000, but I don't beat myself up about that now. But I actually realized that, like when you said worrying, like I'm saying, I shouldn't be worrying about that's just my process.
Yeah.
And I think in turn, I've learned it makes a better, we'll see. I'm getting structural edits this week for my rural romance.
Right.
And I did a lot of reworking and going back and thinking and following my gut and listening to my body about when I was like stuck. And I think it made a better book.
Interesting. Yeah.
So let's see what the structural edits are. I'll tell you next week.
But also that thing of saying to yourself, I shouldn't worry about it. If worrying is your natural state, and like I said, I'm a lifelong worry ward.
Yeah.
It's more stressful to actually tell yourself to not worry, because then you're saying to yourself, don't follow your own nature.
Yeah, I never even thought about it like that. And I think it's probably because for me, like you said, you're a lifelong worrier. I would say I'm not. That the anxiety that I have over writing is the first type of anxiety I've ever had in my life. And it only came to me probably 5 years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago. It'd probably been developing over a while. And so to me, it's not something, like, it almost feels alien, if that makes sense.
Right.
Because it's not something like, I don't have anxiety. I probably should have anxiety about children. I probably should have anxiety about finance. I probably should be worrying about, a whole load of things in the world. But I've never been a worrier. I'm not a perfectionist. I'm like quite an easygoing kind of person. So to then have to deal with the worry and anxiety in my writing is something I guess I never expected. And so, that's true though. I I sort of look upon it as something that I should be trying to get over instead of just maybe going with it.
Well, it's thinking of it as a feature, not a bug now. So originally it might have been a bug. Now it's a feature. Is it a bad feature?
I'm always writing notes from what you say because you're so wise.
But I started to think about this a while ago. It's like we love to pathologize things. Oh, if you worry, then it must be this bigger problem. It's like, well, maybe I'm just a worrier. That's okay. That's my nature. And if I sit here thinking, oh, I really need to change it, I shouldn't be worrying, that adds a level of stress because I'm essentially saying to myself, be someone different.
You're worrying about being a worrier.
Yeah, worry about being a warrior and be someone other than I am. It's like, well, this is my nature. And we can spend a lot of time trying to change our natures. And maybe we think we should be the person who does this or the person who does that. The person you're probably looking at is showing you 1/10 of who they are.
So true.
Pretending that everything's lovely or they're doing this, that, and the other, or maybe they have a whole household staff who's getting their house Instagram ready, but all you're seeing is perfect. So it's like I'm a big believer now. It's taken a few years to get there, but just in trusting one's own nature, and that does require a degree of introspection. And whether you get that through writing, through some kind of creative work, whether it's through yoga practice, whether it's through playing tennis, whatever it is, spending a bit of time getting to know yourself and then saying, okay, well, this is me. And I need to do things that are true to my nature and my values, if that's something that interests you as well, and not worry or spend any time fretting about trying to be someone else.
Yeah, I love that. And it's really good advice. So I feel like we go off on huge tangents for our people who send a simple question about, do you read while you write? But thank you for that question.
And to that person, I would say, know your own nature, and then you won't worry about someone else creating your boundaries or your borders, however you want to think of it, of what you're writing. It's like you'll know who you are, you'll know what you're writing. And you'll have confidence in the act of doing it, even if it may not be as you were hoping for in that first draft, whatever it is. But claim that authority. Who else is going to do it if not you? We all have a right to sit down and do it.
I think when you said about that, claim that first draft, what it is, right? That's the problem as well. Like you have this new idea and you've got this blank page, and it's before you start messing it up. It seems to be, such a great concept or premise, and oh my gosh, this is going to be the book. It's better than all the rest. And then you start writing it, and it's like, nope, this book is just the same. It's just all the rest.
Well, if it's at all helpful, there's something. I have a friend I've known for a long time. It was her band I was in when we played Tamworth. She has a different band now. And years ago, I always thought she was like the most amazing person. She's got this real rock star energy. So she used to say something to me then, which I say now all the time. She used to say, sweetie, darling, sweetie, are you loving yourself sick? You've got to be loving yourself sick. So now I walk around going, you know what? I am loving myself sick. And it's really helpful for the writing process and the self-doubt, because I just think, no, I'm loving myself sick. It's like a neuro-linguistic programming thing.
Okay, I'm going to try that tomorrow when I write.
It really helps to throw, because our band was called the Sweetie Darling Sweeties. So it actually really helps to throw in. You go, sweetie, darling, sweetie, I am loving myself sick.
We need to have some merch and put that on there.
And I think it might have been a Kath and Kimism originally. I'm not sure where she got from.
Okay.
But it's a certain, there's a certain attitude to it, and it does have the benefit of, it has the benefit of being true, but also when you repeat it to yourself, it does have this effect. You just go, it's fine. Everything's great.
Yeah.
So that's my prescription for you, Rach.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the therapy session. If anyone else wants Soph to give them some good therapy, email in a question. Hijack question, but we'll do our best.
We've got an answer in the end, and I've had you talking for a long time, and I believe your sons are cooking dinner, and you may wish to go and eat it.
Well, it's probably cold, but that's okay.
Well, I'm going to stop recording, and we'll talk again very soon.
Speak soon. Bye.